Hello, Darryl Davis here, and welcome to the History of the Gosford Musical Society. Today, I'm going to be doing something a bit different. I've been concentrating on venues before. Today, I want to look at one particular show that we did in 2005. It's called, as you can see by your screen, the Scarlet Pimpernel. Now, this is the program cover. And also it was used for a lot of our advertising, so it was on billboards and things like that. But you know, when we pick a show here at Gosford Musical Society, you have certain challenges that you have to meet. One is, will it be, the audience like it? A second one is, are our members going to like it? Certainly like it enough to audition or to be involved. And thirdly, if you're on the production team, you're always looking for some challenge to really keep you immersed in the show. For myself, with the Scarlet Pimpernel, I directed it in 2005. So I'm going to tell you from sort of my viewpoint on how that show evolved, okay? One of the biggest challenges that I felt straight away was that many people didn't know the show. I didn't know it. I knew about the story of the Scarlet Pimpernel, and I'd seen several. I think there were 3 movie versions that I saw, but a musical-wise, no. I'd heard a cast album, and I loved the music. It's by the same man, Frank Windhorn, who wrote Jekyll and Hyde, so it was a fantastic musical score. But as I didn't know much, and it failed basically on Broadway. It didn't do well at all. It was only on off-Broadway that it was okay. So we sent for a libretto. I had a look and said, yeah, I'd love to do it, and we did. But the challenge in there was costumes. It was a huge challenge. And we have got so many wonderful costume designers, but even this show was going to push the boundaries. The reason being was that it was set in France. It was set in France just after the French Revolution. So French Revolution was 1789, and this picks up just after that at a period of time called the Reign of Terror. And that's when the French government was trying to basically kill off the nobles. And that's what this story is about. It's about, well, I'll show you a picture of the characters here. 3 main characters that we had in the Scarlet Pimpernel were Sir Percival Blakeney on the left-hand side, played by Christopher Hamilton. He becomes, in this show, you can see him over there, he becomes the Scarlet Pimpernel. It's also about his wife, Marguerite Saint-Just, who was, of course, French. And the baddie in every show needs a baddie, Citizen Chauvelin, who was an agent of the French government that carried out this reign of terror. You see, what they did was they went around, and any nobles that they could get their hands on, they would move away in a cart called a tumbril, and they took them to either execute them or put them in prison. And that's what this story, that's the guts of this story. Because you see, Sir Percival decided that what he was going to do, being a nobleman, an English nobleman, was to get a band of men, and they were going to go across the English Channel to France and rescue these imprisoned French noblemen. So it's a wonderful story. Now, what I'm going to do is talk through a number of these slides because costuming is what I want to concentrate on. Now, this is a picture of our what's called a pannier, if I've said that correctly, a pannier. Now, a pannier was a side hoop, as you can see there. Was worn in the undergarments of a dress. It was to make the dress look fuller, and they actually did a lot of embroidery or a lot of things on the top of that embroidered pannier to make it look so distinguished. The other thing about that picture is the wigs, which I'll look at later, but I want you to take a very good look at that wig. Now, most of the women that lived in the 18th century that were nobility, they wouldn't have had many dresses at all. See, they didn't have dry cleaners, they didn't have a way to launder them, and one of the things they would have done at that time was to get the old perfume bottle out, splash it up to try and disguise the smell, which it would have been, of course, at that time. So the elaborate decorations were on that particular one, as you can see. And we'll go here. Now, there's an example of a wig. That young lady played the understudy of Marguerite Saint-Just. She also played Evita when we did Evita a number of years later. You know, one thing about the wigs is that the nobility all wore 'em, whether it be England or France. And that particular wig, how high it was, I've seen pictures, not photographs, but pictures, drawn pictures of that period where the middle part of that wig was cut out and a bird was placed in it and a little like bird cage inside. Isn't that incredible? Amazing. They were very itchy as well, and so that people were constantly scratching their heads, and maybe they wore wigs, I don't know, to make them look very fashionable indeed. But I don't think they looked all that great. Here's to show you again the challenging costumes. These girls were all servants in the show. And look at the fullness of these servants, and they go from the hats I'm talking about. They go from very large down to smaller ones. And again, these all had to be handmade, and these were made by our costume people here at the Gosford Musical Society. Now there is another example of wigs. Now this is at the Prince's Ball. And the Prince being in the middle there. He's a wonderful character actor called Alan Moore, and he played not only the Prince of Wales, but he played the bad guy in France, Maximilien de Robespierre. So he got to do two different parts, and he had two different looks. But that's at the Prince's Ball. And those wigs, particularly of the women, I think we bought all those. And we have since rented them out to other places. But very stylish. And you'll see other pictures of that scene later on. There's another picture of that, a fuller picture, I guess. But have a look at those gowns. Each of those were made by hand by people here at the Gosford Musical Society. Every one of them. Quite incredible. And they get rented out to societies all over the country. They are fascinating. Now here we have, again, another example of a totally different fashion. Within the show, there's a wedding. And the wedding takes place between Sir Percival Blakeney and Marguerite St. Just. Now there's a little subplot here that you see Blakeney discovers just after the wedding that his wife is actually a secret agent for the French. He doesn't know that beforehand. And so what he does after this wedding is he becomes very foppish, very feminine. And he starts to act very funny, you know, what? He does that throughout. It's a fascinating story. But you have a look at those different costumes there. Again, from the bishop, where he's wearing the bishop mitre there. And of course, the wedding dress is just fantastic. Now here we have French soldiers. French soldier here is Jamie. And we had 6 French soldiers in there. At the very beginning of the show, I wanted to get the audience really into this. So as the curtain went up, I had the French soldiers come down the aisles of the theater up to the stage, because the story is they're supposed to close down the action that's taking place. And Marguerite St. Just is the star of the show, and she gets thrown out. There's a whole lot of things. But that soldier outfit is great, and that has been rented out many, many times as well. And thank you very much for being with me for the Scarlet Pimpernel. And I'll look forward to talking to you for part 2.